Joining us on this edition of the News Review, we have Mr. Saeed Shabi from the Bahrain Freedom Movement. Joining us from the British capital, London, also we have Ghina Rebai, researcher at Bahrain Forum for Human Rights, joining us from the Lebanese capital, Beirut. Welcome to the program. Let's start off with Mr. Shabi. Sir, give us your thoughts on the recent anti-government protests and what it is that the demonstrators are demanding right now.
Well, in the past few months, there have been a lot and great worries that the coronavirus, the pandemic, could infiltrate into the prisons. And there were a lot of calls for the prisoners to be released, including from known and famous human rights bodies outside Bahrain. But unfortunately, the regime did not heed the calls. And furthermore, it did not take extra care. It didn't use proper sanitation and medical care to prevent the spread of the disease. Now, in the last few days, suddenly the families received calls from their children telling them that they have been infected by the disease. So at the moment, there are scores, more than 60, 70 people in one block of the prison, the notorious Joe prison, who have now been infected by the disease. And of course, their families have been very, very worried. This is why they took to the streets in the past 2 or 3 days, calling for the immediate and unconditional release of those prisoners of conscience. The situation is very tense. People are angry, mothers are crying. Human rights bodies inside and outside the country are calling on the regime to just end this crisis, the crisis of the spread of the coronavirus inside the prison, but also the continuation of the detention of those prisoners of conscience who are held solely for their expression of opinion.
Mr. Rebai, in Beirut, please share with us your thoughts on the recent demonstrations. We're still seeing a continued crackdown against the pro-democracy protesters by the Al Khalifa regime.
Hello. Indeed, the problem is that since the outbreak of the pandemic, families of the detainees, prisoners of conscience, human rights organizations and civil society organizations have been very afraid that the virus will reach to the prisons because the relevant authorities, and specifically prison administrations, have not taken sufficient precautionary and preventive measures to prevent the spread of the virus inside the prisons. Moreover, prison police officers used to blend with their families and societies outside prison and then interact with the detainees inside prisons without applying any necessary precautions, and there were no one to hold them accountable or monitor them in applying the necessary precautions. Now the problem has happened. The first case, the first detainee confirmed with coronavirus disease was 8 days ago, and just in 8 days there are over 60 cases confirmed. These are just prisoners of conscience. There are other criminal prisoners confirmed as well. And these are just the confirmed numbers. There are numbers that are not even confirmed yet. So there's a grave fear that the number of infections are highly subject to increase, especially because the prisons are overcrowded. And the authorities still yet did not take any measures to end the prison overcrowding. So the confirmed cases follow negligence by the authorities responsible for the prison conditions, unfortunately.
Mr. Shabi, why is all of this, the situation in Bahrain, being underreported by the mainstream Western media?
Well, the Western media is part of the Western regime. It is a system, it is a political and ideological system which has linked its interest with the relations with the countries like Bahrain, like Saudi Arabia, and the media will only pay lip service to what is going on there. We know that it is very much underreported. We know they are not taking interest. We know that the mainstream media like the BBC, CNN, and others will only now and then, once in a while, shed some light on what's going on. But well, we have always known that there is lack of independence and freedom, despite what they say. I do not accept that they are independent and they are neutral. They are not neutral. They are part to the party to the ideological warfare, if I want to say that. But the ideological differences between the West and other countries. I hope the media in the West, I hope the parliaments and the governments take a different approach to countries like Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, who are continuously threatening and violating the rights of their citizens. Bahrainis are very much oppressed, very much underreported. Their cases are very much underreported. The situation has not really become stable at all since 2011. We continue to see protests here and there, last night, the day before, and we could see them in the Twitter and in other media. But unfortunately, these protests do not appeal to the Western media because they do not serve the purpose of the politics of the West.
Ms. Rebai, one last question for you. Under former President Trump, Bahrain secured $8.5 billion in arms deals. A group of 15 rights bodies in a letter just recently said Bahrain rulers were emboldened by President Trump, quote, sending a clear message that his administration would place the pursuit of profit before people. That very a group of rights bodies, they said to the Biden administration that we hope your administration will ensure that human rights are once again placed at the center of U.S. foreign policy in Bahrain. That policy will never change, will it?
Well, to begin with, the Bahrain Authority relies only on its alliances with especially USA, KSA, and Britain. It doesn't have a popular base in Bahrain. If there was a decent election, this authority, the Al Khalifa family, wouldn't be ruling. So, the Obama administration the Obama speeches were very humane, and he spoke about human rights and stuff. But on the ground, there was nothing regarding Bahrain. So what would change with the Biden administration? His speech is just like the Obama speech. The history of Al Khalifa with the USA was always alliances with Obama and all the Democrats and all Republicans. So we don't really see that anything would change. If it would, let it be. Let them apply it on the ground.
All right, thanks a lot. Ghina Rebai joining us from the Lebanese capital Beirut. Also thanks to Mr. Saeed Shaabi joining us from the British capital London. With that, it brings us to an end here on this edition of Press TV's News Review, but do stay tuned. There's plenty more to come here on Press TV.